Welcome, friends and neighbors. John, your whiskey neighbor here, and today is an excellent special day for our channel because today I get to be with Bob Baxter, one of the two who started Two Brewers, or Yukon Brewery.
Both?
Yeah, up in the Yukon, and I wanted to give a chance to hear from yourself, Bob, a bit about starting up whiskey, but before that, actually, you got your start in brewing, right?
That's right. We opened our brewery in 1997 in Whitehorse, so just passed through 23 years. So we've been at that for a while, for sure.
Awesome. I've read on your website you were canoeing or something, and you had is there a story behind how you decided, you know what, let's start a brewery?
Well, I have been doing some research, and my life before brewing was as a consulting engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I had a fella in the mid-'80s walk into my company and say, I'd like to build a brewery in the Yukon. Would you like to do the engineering for it? So of course we said yes. And he had some government programs, long story short, he had a bit of a house of cards that when one of the cards left, his project left. But that's where the idea got planted in my head of, you know what, he's probably onto something. So started to do some research, went outside the Yukon to get a bit of training, and ended up in the mid-'90s on a canoe trip on a river called the Jennings River in northern BC that flows back up into the Yukon. There were 3 canoes on it, and one of the other canoes had my eventual partner, Alan Hansen. And as campfire talk always goes, it's all over the map. And I started talking about this research I've been doing on beer. And I knew that Alan is a chemical engineer, so I knew that he had interest in chemistry, obviously, and he talked about his how interested he was in wine. So we both went our own ways, and a couple months later he phoned and he said, well, you know this interest I have in wine, and I don't think I'm going to be making any of that in the Yukon, but are you interested in a partner in the beer project? And my answer was, well, I need someone with a big boot who can kick my butt because I'm not getting anywhere on my own. I need that, that impetus.
Sure.
So that's where it came from. So yeah, we joke a lot that a lot of babies are conceived around a campfire in the Yukon on canoe trips, and this baby certainly was. So.
Well, we're all benefiting from that partnership that started there. So that's a really cool history.
Thanks.
My channel is about whiskey, right? I've looked through Scotch and bourbon, but I do spend a fair amount of time in Canadian whiskey. I appreciate it as a genre. I think it's a very creative and has the ability to be explored. Now, not all Canadian whiskey is that. There's certainly a lot of big players out there that are speaking to their strength.
Yep.
But somewhere after launching the brewery, you came up with an idea, or somehow, I don't know the story behind that, you decided, wow, this is going really well, we should get into distilling.
I'm going to throw this one back to my partner, Alan, again, because as a chemical engineer, he started using the distilling word really early in the whole program.
Really?
And I just kept saying, Al, when we can pay our bills, let's talk about other things we can do, but let's do this first. So it was about 10 years in that we said, we're actually making some money now. We're pretty sure we'll be here next year. Let's revisit that whole distilling thing. So that was 2007. And of course, in our nerdy way, we researched for 2 years, and in 2009 bought our still. But it was Alan's persistence, and about once a year talking about, so, we ready to distill yet? So thanks, Al.
Yeah, no, that's great to have partners that are pushing that way and insistent. When you were talking, I was just thinking, there's a number of craft distilleries that have started across Canada. I'm here in Alberta, right? So I have seen a few around Edmonton and around Calgary. I'm going to ask something here, and I could be totally wrong, and just tell me, no, John, you're totally wrong. But one thing that I've appreciated when I've followed your story is you had a background or a base in brewing. Mm-hmm. And you had good partnership, good things going, and so when you got into distilling, I could be wrong, so to tell me, but I felt you had the ability to put away whiskey and then wait and age it and release it when you thought it was ready, as opposed to, it's really hard to start a company. If you're starting right into distilling, you've got this product that's, in a sense, costing you as it's aging. As soon as you hit the 3-year mark, you're putting it out the door because you've got investors, you've got bills to pay. I respect why it's coming out at 3 years for so many people.
Yep.
But I know you guys didn't do that. Do you want to talk a bit about? Do you feel you knew you could wait because you had the background in brewing, or how did that work out for you?
We knew we could wait because beer paid the bills. And it really was, quite frankly, the fortuitous circumstances where we didn't start distilling without the cash flow to be able to support it coming from the beer. But we were in the same boat. When we started in 2009, we definitely thought, 2012 it'll be legally whiskey. We can wait that long. It'll be fine. And of course, we tasted in 2012 and thought, I'm not sure we want to put our name on this yet. Let's give it one more year. We did that same conversation in 2013 and 14 and 15. And finally in 2016, we said, this moving finish line that we're not struggling with, but keeps rearing its head. I think we're at a point where we can put our name on this. And so in 2016, launched our first release. But we had a luxury that a lot don't have, and that's beer paying the bills.
Yeah. But I, as someone who has followed a number of craft distilleries, really appreciated that you waited till it was just right for to put your name on it.
And it's funny because when we go back and try our release number 1 now, I think we made the right decision. I don't know that waiting longer would have been smart, but there's sure a difference between 2016 whiskey and 2020 whiskey. And it's interesting. Time is just time, and we love talking about 20-year-old whiskeys or 15, we love using the time thing, and I think the only reason we do it, quite frankly, or the main reason we do it, is we understand it. It's a number. We all know numbers.
Right.
But I would say that a 20-year-old whiskey that's in a twice-used bourbon barrel, I'll take a 5-year-old that's in virgin oak or shared virgin oak and fresh dump bourbon.
Right.
There's a lot more character coming through. So it's not just a number, it's a number. Where did it spend that 20 years? And of course, that's an awkward thing to put on a label, or
Right.
I'm in the liquor store. I have 5 minutes to make my purchase.
Right.
I see 18, I can understand it.
Right.
I don't look into 18 what? What's that really mean?
Yeah.
Right. So
no, I would agree, and it's been something that I've struggled with my viewers, and I think all of us with. Age is just a number. It's something. It tells us something about what we're about to experience, but how the distill was created, right? When we look at the malts that went into that, and then if we look at the cask you just mentioned, a fresh dump bourbon barrel is going to be way more expressive than one that's been reused many times and whatnot. Sure. Heard a bit of that tonight, when we were listening from the different whiskey societies, and then you got a chance to speak. What I heard was a passion for the creativity in Canadian whiskey. Could you share a bit with my viewers, because many of them are over the seas in Europe. They can't get Two Brewers there yet, or they get it through those of us that ship them a bottle and say, you got to try this bottle. Right. But I still would love to hear you talk, again, a little bit like you did tonight to the people that were gathered here, about the creative nature or the ways that you feel you can reach your market with different flavors in Canada.
Well, it's interesting. Canadian whiskey is a thing. Like if you go into the regulations, the food and drug regulations in Canada, Canadian whiskey is defined. And so we struggle. While Canadian whiskey is fine, there's nothing wrong with it. What we're making is very different. So we call it made in Canada whiskey as opposed to Canadian whiskey because it's got a definition. But at the end of the day, our brewer's heritage took over early on, and we thought if we were in Scotland, we can only use pale malted barley. That's one of their stipulations. In Canada, there is no stipulation like that. So we took a brewer's attitude. We said, if we're going to make a stout beer, we're going to use a lot of roasted malts and chocolate malts and black malts, and that's where all that color is going to come from and a ton of the flavor. Let's do that for whiskey too. If you're in Scotland, you can't do that, but we can. So our belief was always if what went into the barrel was different, what came out of the barrel would be different. And I think we've shown that. We certainly feel that that's the case. And we obviously taste all the new make before it goes into the barrel. And some of it is wildly different. And in fact, we've had some that is wildly different, like, oh my God, I don't know if this will ever be good. And the barrel does its magic, and eventually it's, you know what, we weren't sure about this. I'm glad we put it in the barrel and waited, because that was our question. Do we dump this down and feed the fish, or do we put it in a barrel and hope?
No, for sure.
So we put it in a barrel and hope, and it turned into awesome. We look at it as a spice rack. All of our piles of barrels with that different liquid that went into it would be like you opening the cupboard in your kitchen and seeing all of your spices, except with a couple of things that are different. One is none of them are labeled, because our barrels aren't. And you can't see any of them, because we can't see through the barrels. So every jar of spice, you can't see it, and it's not labeled. The only way you can decide if you want that spice is to take it off the rack, dip your finger in it, give it a lick, and go, yeah, I don't want that in my soup. Not today. And we're doing the same thing with our barrels. And every time we do an expression, we're making soup with all of those different spices that are at our availability.
Well, as someone who's actually experienced a fair amount of whiskey in a short journey, I've always appreciated the quality of the what you're putting together. So I appreciate you're going to the spice rack, figuring it out, but what's coming out is really exceptional single malt Canadian whiskey.
Well, awesome. I really appreciate that.
Should I just say single malt? Sorry.
Yeah, single malt made in Canada. Yeah, it's a tough one for sure. Absolutely.
Actually, while you were talking, I realized that really most of my viewership is actually American. And when they think Canadian whiskey, they often misthink rye as well, because that's a legal way to describe whiskey in Canada, even if there's no rye spirit.
It's another one of those defined terms. Like Canadian whiskey has a definition, so does rye whiskey, and it is an odd thing that one of the parts of the definition isn't that it needs any rye in it, as you know. So
yeah, and I should have made that very clear just to anyone who's joined us that you have been so clear in making single malt. And it's really fantastic single malt.
Well, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it. It's for us, and again, it really still is a fun project. Gone a little bit crazy. It's kind of taken on a life of its own, but we made it originally because we thought, well, we could probably do this, and it might be good someday.
Yeah.
And it's still, well, why don't we try this? Why don't we try this ingredient? Why don't we try triple distilling this one instead of double distilling it? And now, again, it's making another spice for the rack. Someday we're going to be glad that we made that. We don't know when that day will be, and it might not even be us. It'll be our successors that enjoy that effort that we made today. But we enjoy making it and trying the varieties that are available to us.
Well, I want to thank you, Bob, for the work that you've been doing at Two Brewers for all of us, right? Advancing higher quality whiskey expression through single malt, and also for being an innovative, responsible part of the community. I was talking to some people that know you from Yukon. You guys have a recycling facility or something.
We do a lot of stuff. We've never heated our building with anything but waste heat off of the cooling system we need to make beer. It's a mandatory thing, and right off the bat, and again, we're engineers who started the thing. That's just what you do.
Yeah.
If you've got heat being generated, you heat your building with it.
Use that. Yeah.
So,
I didn't mean to take the conversation where I've been giving you a heads up, but while we were talking, I was just saying, it's more than just it's exceptional quality single malt. I appreciate that, but also being just a great part of the community as well in the work you do.
Well, thanks so much, Sean. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.